Thank you for joining us for another power-packed message from Dr. Myles Munroe, provided by Munroe Global Incorporated and MunroeGlobal.com. We transform followers into leaders and leaders into agents of change. We hope that this message is a blessing to you as you advance your life and discover your purpose. Now, let's go into the message.
Discovering your personal leadership. Whenever there is an invitation for people to attend a leadership event or to participate in a leadership conference like this, most people respond to that invitation with the attitude that that is not for me. That response is proof that your culture has done an excellent job in canceling who you are. This place, for example, would have been filled to capacity if we had said, come to a miracle service. So this doesn't affect me at all. I know exactly what's going on here. I expected you, and only you. I'm not impressed with crowds. You see me? I speak to them all the time, millions of them. My real love is people like you who believe that this is for you. You know, Jesus didn't like crowds. He didn't trust them. Because he understood the strategy for changing the world. And the strategy for changing the world is not large meetings or big events. It's small groups committed to intensive transformation. So he chose 12 people. Can you imagine someone who came to change the world only chose 12 people? And his only focus with them was on leadership development. He started with raw material, which means these 12 specimens had no formal training in leadership. What I thought was a good strategy that he used was he at least chose businessmen. I like business people. Religious people are problems. So the people he chose were business people and professional people. Like Matthew was an accountant. Luke was a doctor, a medical doctor. Peter, James, and John owned a fishing company. These were businessmen. And the number one business of that day was fishing in that village around Galilee. So these guys were owners of the top business industry. That's who he chose. Because he wanted to produce leaders. One time, his crowd grew too much. You all would remember that one day the people stayed with him for 3 days and they ran out of food. He decided it's my responsibility to make sure that they are fed before they go home. So we know the story. He worked a miracle, multiplied fish and bread, and he fed them. And the Bible says after that meeting was over, 70 joined him. 70. Can you imagine having 12 people and all of a sudden you grew by 70%? Now normally when you grow by 70% you are excited. Jesus was not. He was suspicious. Why? Because he understands big crowds. They are not interested in changing. They're interested in feeding. So he turned to the 70 and he asked them a question. Why do you follow me? That was the question. Now, normally, if you are a pastor, and your church grew by 70% in one day, you wouldn't ask that question. Matter of fact, you would say, thank you all for coming. But his suspicion was high. He said, why do you follow me? And then he answered the question for them. I know why you follow me. Is it not because of the fish and bread I fed you yesterday? See, there are people who just want miracles, but they don't want to change. And miracles never change people. You would remember the children of Israel. They saw more miracles than any of you could dream of. And in the end, they were still cursing God. And then Jesus tops it off by saying, if you seek for a miracle, you are a wicked and adulterous generation. So he asked them, why are you with me? It's only because of the fish and bread. You just want stuff from me. You want handouts. You people ain't interested in changing the world. You just want welfare. Watch him now. He says, look, if you want to follow me, if you want to be my disciple, he says, you must stop looking for the bread and the fish. And you must feed on me. Eat my flesh, he says, and drink my blood. You know, those are the kinds of people who are here in this seminar tonight. I consider you very rare people. I'm not surprised. I tell you, I work with crowds. I don't trust. It's those who show up in the morning sessions, they're the ones I believe. Those ones who come to the workshops, they're the real people. They're the ones who God will spend his time with and give them what they expected and more. The Bible says when the 70 heard this, I must eat your flesh and drink your blood, feed on you. It says, they said to each other, this is a hard saying. In other words, you are demanding too much. You want us to stay with you and look to you for our livelihood? It says, they forsook him and walked away. Could you imagine losing 70% of your members in one day? Sure, it can happen. But what intrigued me and impressed me is what he did after they left. It was a leadership act. Because he was training now these 12 guys, okay? So he turns to the 12, this text says, and asks them a question. Will you leave also? In other words, are you just like them? He also meant, I will do this by myself. By the way, that's one of the most important principles of leadership, you know. Finding something worth doing by yourself. That's good. If you need people to like you and approve of you for you to do what you're doing, you are not a leader yet. You're a politician. He was willing to go alone. Peter spoke up and said, Master, Rabbi, which means master teacher. I'm going to paraphrase Peter, okay, a little bit. Peter probably said, we think you are crazy, Jesus. We too think you are a little bit weird, but you make sense to us. In you, he says, we have found the words that give us life or give our life meaning. That's what leaders do. Leaders give people's lives meaning. That's why they follow you. People will follow you when they receive a sense of significance for their own lives. Peter's answer was powerful. In you, we have found the words that give us life. Our business was doing great. You know, we have a company, but you have shown us that we could do more than just business. We can change the world. And that's why we're here in this seminar the next 2 days. I guarantee you, if you listen to me very carefully, the next 48 hours, you are going to be transformed as a person. But you got to listen. You got to feed on me just a little bit. Because what I'm teaching you is what I live. And it begins with discovering what I call your personal leadership. Leadership does not begin with people. It begins with you first. Let me give you a couple of things to write down, because I'm giving you what they never taught me in church. And that is, everyone is a leader. Pastors are afraid to say that because they don't want no competition in the pulpit. But leadership begins with how you think. So let me give you my philosophy of leadership that I had to discover for myself to become the person I am. Everyone was created to lead. Say that with me. Everyone was created to lead. Say it again. Everyone was created to lead. That's a tough statement. Most of you don't believe that statement. I understand it. I understand. Because I was the same way. Because when you read that statement, there is a contradiction in your mind right now. There's a battle going on. I know what the battle is. The battle is a question. If everyone was created to lead, then who's going to follow? And there's your battle. I'll give you another statement. Write this down. Trapped in every follower is a hidden leader. These are philosophical statements, but they are very important, because leadership begins with your belief. And your belief system determines your philosophy of life. If every follower is a leader, then the question becomes a problem again. What happens when they all become leaders? Who's going to follow? The fact that you ask that question is proof that you've been successfully convinced by your culture that only a certain type and group of people were born to lead, while the other masses were designed to follow. That's really what you believe. That's why the question arises. Because you cannot see in your mind everyone being a leader. You have problems in your mind. I had the same problems. And this is why I teach this so hard. Because it is that belief, that subtle belief that's in your mind that's trapping you right now. For example, in my mind, there is no economic crisis. But that's because of the way I think. So your thinking is your life. I'll give you another statement to write down. You were created to lead and designed to dominate. Say it with me. I was created to lead and designed to dominate. Now the words are very powerful. You don't evolve into a leader. You were created to be one. The manufacturer actually had leadership in mind when he created you. But look at what they've done to you. They've made you an employee. And they told you where you can be employed and where you cannot be employed. And then they restrict how far you can rise in that employment. That's right. What have they done to you? It's because nobody has challenged the system. This philosophy is not new that I'm teaching. It's as old as God. Write this statement down, please. True leadership is self-discovery. True leadership begins with an individual discovering something about themselves. That's when it really begins. And you will never become a true leader until you are introduced to yourself. You know, if you were to study the leaders of history who really changed the world, beginning with people like Moses maybe, you know. Here Moses is on a job. He's employed by his father-in-law. Employment. So he thinks he's a shepherd. You know, that's what I do. That's my job. And then he meets his manufacturer. The manufacturer says to him, you are the deliverer and the leader of 1 million people. You are also an author of the first 5 books of the Bible. You are the leader of a labor force. You are a lawgiver for all the nations of the world. They're going to steal your laws and use them. His answer, you must be talking to somebody else. You see, when you meet yourself, you are always afraid. Most of you are afraid of yourself because yourself does not agree with who you've become. You think you are a shepherd, a manager, a supervisor, and your real self is the first prime minister of a country called Israel. And when I introduce myself to myself, myself says to myself, that's not me. And I argue for 3 weeks with myself. Gideon. Remember Gideon? Hiding under the floor, trembling in fear from the enemy outside. And then the manufacturer shows up. Good evening, Gideon. Do you know who you are? You are a mighty man of valor. Gideon says, who are you talking to? You see, when you meet yourself, you can't believe yourself. And we are so corrupted by our culture, we actually argue with ourselves with good arguments. Gideon says, I was born in the wrong family, born in the wrong clan, born on the different side of the track. Are you crazy? People like us don't be valors. We ain't mighty warriors. We are cowards. And the manufacturer says, you are a mighty man of valor. He says, tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a fleece outside. In the morning, if it's wet, I'll believe you. So he put a fleece, it's wet. He said, just to make sure, if I put it out again, if it's dry in the morning. In other words, here we are fussing with ourselves. You know why I came here to this conference? I came here to introduce you to yourself. What you are doing is embarrassing to God. What you are proud of, he's ashamed of. What you settle for is a shock to heaven. I know what I'm talking about. I was there. You got to discover something. And that's where leadership begins. It begins with self-discovery. I want you to take a look at this slide. This is a car. You ever seen a car like that before? That's a car. 40,000 parts or more make up a car. That's a car, taken apart. Now, I show you that for a reason. I want to ask you a question. Here's the question. Which part of this car is the most important part of the car? You look at the engine of the car. What is the most important part of the engine? I mean, these questions are important. 40,000 parts. Which part is the most important? Your car in the parking lot has a great engine in it. Beautiful parts. But the question is, which part is the most important? Now, I'm going to show you two parts here. The battery is the big boy. So if I was to ask you which is the most important part of your engine, you would probably say the battery, because the battery has all the power. Powerful. You know, we like powerful people, don't we? Power. Hallelujah, power. You know, we like power. So we go for the power. We say the battery is the most important person in the car, because the battery has the power to get things started. Well, I disagree. So who's the lead in this engine? Is it the battery? Well, we got a little thing on the side called the spark plug. Now, the battery probably costs about 150 bucks. Spark plug costs about maybe, 10 bucks. So we got difference in value as well. Can the battery become more important than the spark plugs? If you remove the spark plugs, the battery is useless. So who's more important? Well, I don't know yet. I'm going to show you something else. Right in the middle of this picture, there is a little wire. Right in the middle, in the background. See a little wire? It's called a terminal wire. The terminal wire is what you connect to the battery and to the generator. The terminal wire costs $4. The battery costs $150. Who's more important in this car? Well, let's find out. With all the power the battery has, if you remove that $4 wire from the battery's terminal, the battery is useless. So who's the leader? Well, let's find out here. All the power trapped in the battery. The battery is useless to the car without a $4 wire. Who's the most important person in your organization? Is it the CEO or the maintenance woman? Is it the secretary who types? Or is it the manager of stores that oversee resources? Who really is the leader? See, this scenario is an interesting one, because that $4 wire can shut the car down. The car is worth $80,000. $4 can shut it down. Isn't that amazing? Now the problem is, this little terminal wire has to connect to the battery and to the generator. And all it does is a function called transfer. It transfers power to the generator that hits the spark, that turns the shaft, that caused that whole engine to turn over, to cause the wheels to turn, and you can control it. Transfer. The only problem is the terminal wire has no power. It's just a transfer function.
That's good.
Only problem with the battery is it cannot transfer. It has all the power. Only problem with the spark plug is it ain't got no power and can't transfer, but it can produce fire. So who's the leader in this whole situation? No one and everyone. That's the answer. Here's the answer. Everyone is a leader in their area of functioning. Write it down. This is the concept of leadership that God introduced. Every part of the car is a leader in its area of functioning. So we have to respect each part. They have successfully convinced you that you are useless. And they use you to do what they want you to do. They meaning your culture. And you obey them because you don't know who you were born to be. You have no idea what your function is. When I discovered who I was, I became free from them. I began to dictate my own value. Therefore, I told them, you need me. Come on, say it. You need me. Say it like you feel it. You need me. See, you become a leader when you discover that one discovery. They need me. The world needs me. Say it.
The world needs me.
Say it loud. The world needs. I want you to say it with a revelation. Come on, say it. The world needs me. Let me tell you something. If you discover that, you become dangerous. You are not an accident. You are an assignment.
That's good.
Leadership. You know, we talk about leadership. This is a photograph of all of the leaders in the world together, the present ones, and a recent photograph taken. And I want to talk in this session about some of the areas I want to cover very quickly. First, my objective is to help you to see that we need and value leadership. Secondly, we want to talk about what leadership is, what it takes to become a leader. We want to talk about the principles of leadership tomorrow and the art of leading, how to do it. And then we want to talk about the cost and the price of becoming a leader. It is costly. And this is why we love following so much. It doesn't cost much to follow. But yet, when you follow, you hardly ever find out who you are. So you want to talk about those things. Now here's a leader that you all are acquainted with. He spent time in this state, born here. Walking through the airport of this state capital, they have his coat and tie. You'd wonder, why would someone want to put a man's coat on display in an airport? And we won't ever see your coat. I'm going to explain to you why, okay? And hopefully, if you get this revelation I'm going to teach you in this leadership seminar, they'll want your coat also. Leadership is an amazing thing. First of all, here's why leadership is important. Write this down. Nothing happens without leadership. Nothing happens without leadership. Number two, nothing changes without leadership. Number three, nothing develops without someone taking leadership. Number four, nothing improves in any situation without leadership. Number 5, nothing is corrected without leadership. If something is not right in an environment, someone has to emerge and take the leadership. Number 6, nothing advances without leadership. Number 7, nothing succeeds without leadership. Number 8 is a reminder. We are always being led by someone, whether we think so or not. So look at how important leadership is. It improves, it changes, it develops, it corrects, it advances, and it brings success in life. This is probably one of the reasons why the religious people are so ineffective, because they pray too much for things to be corrected, to change, to improve, to develop, to advance, and to succeed. I think one day Rosa Parks decided to stop praying. That's all. What made her a leader? She just decided, no more prayer. I'm now going to be active. This is why the drug problem in your community is so diabolically destructive, because you keep praying for them. You wouldn't do anything. Leadership is born when toleration ends. Why? Whatever you tolerate, you will never change. What did I say? Whatever you tolerate, you will never change. This is why there are very few leaders in your city. Your toleration level is very high. Leaders are usually angry people. As a matter of fact, you will learn tomorrow night the secret to becoming a true leader. And one of the secrets is anger.
Yes, Lord.
Wow.
When you decide, I have had enough, a leader is about to be born.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Toleration is the graveyard of leaders. And that's why we lack leadership in the 21st century. Everybody wants to be liked. Nobody wants to rock the boat. And that's why we're not leaders, because we want everyone to agree with us. So what we have is companies and churches and nations that are overmanaged and underled. Don't ever confuse a manager with a leader. No manager is a leader. But leaders are managers. What's the difference between a manager and a leader? In my book on the table called Becoming a Leader, make sure you read that book. It deals with this subject. But let me give you a hint. A manager maintains things. A leader changes everything. A manager follows policy. A leader creates policy. A manager keeps tradition. Leaders break it. Managers focus on the bottom line. How much is it going to cost? Leaders focus on the horizon. Let's do it.
Yes.
Managers focus on doing the right thing. Leaders are very unique. Managers are always focusing on doing things the right way, is what I'm saying. Leaders want to know whether we're doing the right thing. If you are led by a manager, you will never grow. If your pastor is a manager, the church is stuck. If your department is headed by a manager, it will never expand. If your husband is a manager, your family is stuck. So we need managers, but we need leaders more than managers. Because leaders is what give managers work to do. Let me ask some questions. These are some interesting questions I pose to students everywhere. I teach this in universities and I do surveys. And here's my question I give them. Is leadership about power? What do you think? No, okay. Is it about position? Is leadership about talent? You sure? Is leadership about skill? It's a skillful person. Is leadership about authority? Is leadership about status in your society? Is leadership really about charisma? By the way, the word charisma is a Greek word. It's a very dangerous word. It's invented by the Greeks. Some of y'all call yourselves charismatics. Be careful. It's a Greek word. It means giftings of the gods, plural, gods. Because they were polytheists. They believed in many gods. Charisma. The giftings of the gods. Paul used it. He borrowed the Greek word to teach on the gifts of the Holy Spirit. But it's a Greek word. Charisma. We have our own idea what that means. Last question, are leaders born or made? Very important question. Some people struggle with that. I answered it years ago. I'm clear in my head. So the question is, when does one become a leader? It's a tough question, you know, because the question would be, when did Rosa Parks become a leader? See, you don't need to be a PhD from a college to be a leader. You can just be an old lady on a bus. I told you everybody's a leader. Everybody's a leader. The problem is they haven't told you how to become one. She discovered something. Don't die the way you are. Don't give them the privilege of firing you. You're better than that. Don't let people terminate what you call a career. How dare you allow people to cancel your life with a pink slip? This is crazy. That's why we're here. The dumbest animal on the planet is a sheep. Some of y'all don't know that. In case you don't, I'm going to say it again. The dumbest animal God made is a sheep. Do you know why? There are no leading sheep. I want you to study a flock of sheep anywhere. You will never see a leader. It's the only animal in the world that doesn't have a leader. Elephants have a leader. Bulls have a leader. You know, bees have a leader. Everyone except the sheep. If someone say you are a sheep, that's not a compliment. And religious people love the word. They love it. I am God's flock. That's not a compliment. Follow me. I'm going to show you how we are screwed up even in our theology has made us what we are. The sheep is the dumbest animal because he will follow anyone because he has no leader. So I have a little test for you. If an army of sheep is led by a lion, do you believe they will always defeat an army of lions if they are led by a sheep? And the answer is yes. An army of sheep led by a lion will defeat an army of lions if the lions are led by a sheep. What's the moral of this parable? Here it is. Write it down. Number one, leadership determines the quality of the followers. You know, a good leader can transform cowards into warriors. A good leader can transform frightened people into fearless people. Again, what a state to be teaching this principle. The state of Georgia. Years of oppression. And then a short little preacher became a lion. And he motivated frightened people to stand in the face of water hoses. He turned little girls into giants who could face dogs. I mean, this is leadership is so powerful. It can transform cowards. Here's what it means. Number two, leadership determines the mentality of the followers. This is how powerful leadership is. Leadership also determines the morality of the followers. Your morale and your morals can be transformed by the right kind of leader. Leadership also determines the attitude of the follower. In essence, leadership determines the commitment of the follower. That's why we need you. We need you to discover your leadership, because there are people in your city who are being abused by the system. And they need someone to emerge who will give them hope. Because leadership determines the destiny of followers. I couldn't say it any better than my own greatest leader of all time, the ultimate leader of life, when he said these words: if the blind lead, wow. If the blind lead the blind, he says, they both fall into the ditch, which means the leader determines the destination of the followers. That's how powerful leadership is. Let me tell you something about your life. You are exactly where someone led you. If you don't like where you are right now in your life, you're going to have to reconsider changing leadership. You know why I love this church? This is the second time I'm here doing this. I mean, this church, do you know, listen, do you know how many people wanted me tonight? I'm talking about massive organizations in the world wanted me. I decided I like this man's desire. They wanted me to stay in Israel 3 extra days. I said, no, I'm going to Atlanta. Why? There's someone there who believes they can do better. I don't think the members of this church really know who their pastor is. See, your problem is you want to shout and sing hallelujah, and then die broken sick. This conference is about to set you free from that stuff.
Yes, sir.
Makes me so sad. See people, having religious, feel all this emotional stuff. Because they are sheep. They just follow anybody. People come in town with a white suit, white Bible, white shoes. They run to that person. Just sheep. If the blind, what? Lead. You know what Jesus is just telling us? He's telling us it's possible for a person to be in charge with a title, with a position, with power, with influence, and still be blind. Don't ever be impressed with power. Don't be impressed with position. Ask the question, where we going? What's our destination? Because I might not want to go with you. Hello, somebody. See, that's how powerful leadership is. Leadership will lead you to their destiny. Some of you know the story about Jim Jones in Guyana. Sheep. I mean, sensible people with a brain with 500 billion cells followed a man in a bush and drank poison because they never asked the question, where are we going? What is your vision? Write this down. Vision is more important than leadership. Please get the book on vision on the table, please. Very important. People think that leadership is important, but vision is more important than leadership because vision is what creates the leader. What makes you a leader is the fact that you see a future that's better than the present. So leadership is powerful. There are two animals that God identified himself with. Both of them are leaders. One is the eagle, the other is the lion. I always wondered why God did this. But he created them, so he knows their qualities and their character. I love them both. I always love eagles and lions. You come in my office, you see lions and eagles all over the place. In my home, lions, eagles all over the place. In a couple of days we go into Africa. I told my planners down there, I got to go see the lions again. Every time I go, I got to spend time with my cousins. And I go and spend the whole day with them. My wife and them, with the lions, we go there, we spend time with them. Why? They remind me of me. They remind me of leadership. As a matter of fact, Jesus says he is the Lion of Judah. Not the puppy or the dog. The Lion of Judah. Not the monkey or the raccoon. The lion. God identified himself as a lion. You better study the lion. Because he rules the universe, God identified with a lion and he rules the universe. That means the lion has some qualities that he wants you to study. Here's some of the lion that's very strange. Number one, the lion is not the tallest animal in the jungle. He's not the strongest. He's not the biggest. He is not the most powerful. And he's not the most intelligent. And yet he's the leader. Tell your neighbor there's hope for you. What the lion has done is he has canceled all of your excuses for not being a leader. The color of his mane and his skin doesn't inhibit him from being a leader. His intellect, his strength, There are so many animals in the jungle more powerful than the lion. Stronger, taller, bigger, more intelligent. And yet the lion eats all of them for lunch. As a matter of fact, when the lion sees an elephant, he simply thinks lunch. Why is the lion the leader? Because of attitude. Write it down. Just attitude. Attitude comes from your belief system, and it produces confidence. The lion believes that he can eat an elephant. That belief becomes the source of his confidence, and so he moves toward the elephant. The elephant is 50 times more powerful, 100 times bigger, 80 times more intelligent, 60% more powerful, and yet the lion eats him for lunch. Why? Because the lion's attitude reduces that elephant to a meal. This is why he's the leader. Leadership is 80% mentality, attitude, and 20% skill. And this is why skillful people work for those with the right attitude. Look at this lion. I took this photograph myself. There's an elephant and the lion doesn't move. You see, when you look at your problems, how do you respond to them? You got a bill that ain't being paid. You got a mortgage that ain't seem to be addressed. You have demands that you can't meet. This is an elephant. How does a leader look at these things? They see it differently. A leader looks at the elephant and he simply thinks one word: this is lunch. The thinking controls the action of the creature. That's why he's dangerous. What makes Myles Munroe dangerous is my thinking. If I tell you my story, you will know that I am a miracle mentally. I wasn't always like this. I was changed between my ears. I got some new information. I'm going to give that to you these next 2 days. The same information that happened to me. Because I was able to think like the lion. Look at that. Look at that leader in action. Wait a minute. But this is a monster. He said, I don't care. A leader is fearless because of knowledge. There's something the leader knows that makes them fearless. So leadership doesn't get its power from its muscle. It gets its power from its belief. You will never be a leader until I can change the way you believe. Because your belief system produces your philosophy. So leaders don't see through their eyes, they see through their belief. Huh? Your eyes say that's an elephant. Your belief says that's lunch. So if you see through your belief, instead of running away from him, you run toward him. So leaders respond based on their belief system. So to a leader, life is simply what you believe it is. How do you get to think like that? I'm going to show you right now. Because I'm setting you up for tomorrow morning, okay? I want you to really make sure you're here, because this is more important than keeping a job. As a matter of fact, your job is not your work. Your job is what they pay you to do. Your work is what you were born to do. You will never become successful from your job. And your job, you know, ain't permanent. So you can't trust that. You need to find your work. Your job is your skill. Your work is your gift. You can learn a skill, but you're born with your gift, and they can't take that from you. If they fire you, your gift goes with you. That's why I am unemployable. Why? I've been deployed. And I came here for you to deploy yourself. If you deploy yourself, there'll never be a crisis anymore in your life. No more economic crisis to those who deploy themselves. How do you think? And how do you get to think the way you think? And what made you think what you think right now? Where'd you get this attitude from that you have? The history that created you is still with you. And even though you wear different clothes, drive a different car, it's the same person. Because somehow our history is so heavy. It's tough to cut loose. We still apologize for being successful.
That's right.
We feel ashamed to be in charge. It's amazing. See, when you still carry your history, you are afraid of success. Because you may lose your friends who ain't going nowhere. Very subtle problems. Your attitude is so powerful. It creates your atmosphere. It also is a source of your natural lifestyle. And if you're going to change your life, you got to change your attitude. Now here's the bottom line. Write this down. Your belief system is the source of your attitude. I know you came and you're thinking, Dr. Munroe, tell us 10 principles of leadership. No, that's not what you need first. You need to change the way you think first. I was invited to speak at Harvard University a few months ago, and the room was filled with all of these technocrats and these professors and all these, Ivy League people. And they invited me to speak on leadership. Do you know what I came in there and talked about? I talked about thinking. When I was finished, first standing ovation ever at Harvard University, they says. They had never heard anybody get into their heads before. I exposed those who were racist. I showed them that your thinking is your philosophy that destroys the way you treat people in your department.
That's good.
And until your thinking change, you are contaminated leadership. They had never heard such a level of teaching on leadership. Why? Because unless your mind changes, you will never become a leader. Ladies and gentlemen, let me put it this way. Attitude determines your limitation, which means that your belief system determines how far you go. You can never lead beyond your attitude and your belief system. And that's why your life is what you think it should be and exactly what it is. Attitude is the manifestation of your personal philosophy. And that's why this first session is dealing with discovering your personal leadership first. Then we could talk about people. Write this down. Philosophy is a product of your ideas. And this is why I started this session out with a question. Do you believe that everyone is a leader? You have problems with that. And I understand, because the culture doesn't allow it. Could you imagine going to work tomorrow telling your boss, I am a leader too? You just have problems with that. People tell me, they have a PhD in physics, and I laugh at them. I say, really? So what does that mean? That means nothing to me. That doesn't make you better than me. Your education doesn't change your human value. We are still equal as humans. And I do know some things you don't know. So we got to be careful. Our philosophy, our ideas is the source of our philosophy. And I like what the great king said, King Solomon. As a man thinks where? In his heart, so is he. Don't ever quote that verse again without putting the word heart in it. Most of you quote that and leave the word heart out. And the most important part of the verse is the word heart. As a man thinketh, so is he. That is not what he said. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Why? Here's why. Because the heart is the Hebrew word that has to do with the center of reasoning. It's the place where you have meetings with yourself. Where you talk to yourself. That's your heart. That's the meeting place where you are reasoning with yourself. That's where you sit down and say, well, let's see now. Can I do this? Can I not do it? Can I really do this? That's where you're having meetings with yourself. Because that's where your belief system is hidden. In other words, your heart is also, Paul calls it the hidden man. The psychologists would call it your subconscious mind. I call it your hard drive. You know, this iPad got a hard drive on it. Don't trust what's on the desktop. The display, don't trust that. The stuff on the inside, that's the real thing. Now, what is your heart? Your heart is the place where you keep all the ideas you collected all your life, the ones you believe, you keep it. So when you hear the word heart in the Bible, don't point at your chest. Point at your head. Blessed are the pure in heart. Don't go to your chest. Religious people go to their chest. The pump in your body is not impure. It's doing its job, pumping blood. So, blessed are the pure in heart. It ain't nothing to do with your pump. It has to do with your mind. Are your thoughts pure? Are you thinking with purity? So, he says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. As a man thinks in his subconscious mind. What have you downloaded as your software on your hard drive that you believe? Every time someone presses a certain button in your life, whatever is there comes up. For example, there's some of you black people in this room. When a white man comes into your department, you become very nervous. And when a black man comes, you act like you don't care. In other words, there's something in your heart, your hard drive still got some problems. There's some viruses. You're sick. It's there on your hard drive. 40 years of struggle and you're still there. You ain't free yet. You just delivered.
That's right. Come on, that's good.
Deliverance is when you leave Egypt and enter the wilderness. Freedom is when Egypt leaves your mind. So stop telling people you're free. You are still in the wilderness. And notice what God did in the wilderness, eh? He kept them going around in circles. 40 years going around in circles. You know, my wife and I had an experience, I'll never forget this. We went from Israel to Egypt. And, you know, we were going to visit Egypt for the first time. And this years ago we went there. We've been there a couple of times. And, man, the aircraft took off. And I'm getting excited. I'm going to see Egypt. I'm going to see Pharaoh, you know, remains of the, you know, all this stuff. Get excited. And before I could get excited, they said, we're about to land. Fasten your seatbelts. I said, wait a minute. We just took off. And the flight attendant says, yes, we're landing. I said, well, we just left. She said, yes, but we're landing. Ah. I said, what are you talking about? It's only been 20 minutes. She said, yes, we are in Egypt. 20 minutes. We are in Egypt. I said, what are we doing in Egypt already? She says, Cairo is only 20 minutes away. No, you didn't hear what I just said. Okay, let me explain it to you. It took Moses them 40 years to go from Egypt to Israel, where I was. 20 minutes. So when we got to Egypt, right, they picked us up, took us to our hotel, checked us in, and then our first tour guide, came to get us, and we boarded the bus, and we going out to the pyramids. On our way out there, I became very intrigued. So I asked the driver, I said, excuse me, sir, how far is Israel from here? He said, oh, it depends on how you go, he says. I said, well, explain it to me. He said, well, from Cairo to Israel, Jerusalem, if you walk, it's about 40 days. You take a bus, it's 24 hours. Take a plane, it's 20 minutes. I told my wife, where's my Bible? I got to read my Bible again. I went back hotel room, grabbed my Bible. I said, let me just see. I think God made a mistake. It took them 40 years for a 40-day trip. And then I read in the Bible, it says, because they had not gotten Egypt out of their minds, the Lord led them the long way round until their children were born. Let me just give you the point I'm making here. God will deliver you, but will never set you free. You got to set yourself free. They walked around in that desert for 40 days. Why? 40 years. Why? Because 40 years is a generation. What was God doing? He was waiting for 40 years until he got what they were carrying in their loins. The next generation. When the kids came up, God killed them all. Killed all the parents. By the Bible says God allowed none of them to go into the promised land. Why? Because they were still thinking about onions instead of milk and garlic instead of honey. They didn't change their thinking. Your mentality is more important than your location. If you don't change as a person mentally, you will stay where you are physically. So God killed them all. Only 2 left. And those 2 were born in the desert. Caleb, Joshua. They had no memory of oppression. They believed anything was possible. Leadership begins with thinking. So my question is, what is your philosophy of leadership? Well, why don't you believe that you could own a company? Why the first thing you look for is a job instead of look for a business? It's subtle questions, but why? Why do you go to college and study an area that guarantees employment rather than guarantees deployment? Because your hard drive is stuck. I sit with heads of states. You saw those pictures. Heads of state, kings, governments. I work with them all the time. And most of the folks who run countries are sick just like you. They don't know what to do with the country. Power doesn't make you smart. It exposes your ignorance. Let me quickly do this because I don't want you to have nightmares. Let me just give you, let me conclude this by giving you God's philosophy of leadership, okay? I'm going back to the beginning where you began. Genesis chapter 1 is really about you. Verse 26 says, then God said, let us make a species called man in our own image, according to our likeness. And he tells us why. He says, to let them have dominion over fish of the sea, birds of the air, over the cattle and the animals of the field, over all that's growing in the earth, and over everything that creeps on the ground. Now, every word in this statement is very important. And in this verse is the secret to your life. It's the secret to your greatness and your leadership. This is where I found mine right here. I found it in here. I'm just going to say this. I hate to talk about these things, but I'll just say it. In a lot of my contracts with governments, they pay me $5,000 an hour. Could you imagine? You work for 10 hours. 3 days. Okay. I used to sleep on the floor with roaches. I am from a family of 11 children. One mother, one father. I am number 6, right in the middle. We were born in a wooden house on 4 big rocks in a small, low-income, poor area called Bainstown in the Bahamas, in an island 7 miles wide. That was my life. 7 miles wide, 20 miles long. I was born middle of an island, poorest part. The house had 2 rooms. 11 kids now, 2 bedrooms. One for my mother and father, one for my 7 sisters. We slept like sardines. So the 4 boys slept on the floor. That's where I was born. One chicken for 11 kids. The neck was delicacy. Listen, this is my life. 1 pair of shoes for the whole year. If it sprung a hole, I had to put cardboard in it. I remember sleeping with roaches running over my body. I remember waking up in the morning with blotches, blood. I was scratching the mosquitoes that were trapped under the dirty sheet on that mat on the floor. I remember looking up at the ceiling and seeing the stars through it and buckets to catch the water from the rain. Don't talk to me about poverty. And my father was a Baptist pastor. And I went to church 3 or 4 times a week, and I slept with roaches. Don't tell me about religion. So when I talk to you from this position I'm talking to, I'm telling you what worked for me. And now to be paid $5,000 an hour. How do you move from the floor with roaches to being called on by heads of states to talk to the entire governments? Something happened in my mind. And it began with this verse. Let us make man. The word man here is the word ish. I-S-H, write it down in Hebrew, ish. It's a plural word, which means that God wasn't making a person, he was making a species. All of us is called man. For example, we call all dogs, dogs. We call all cats, cats. God called all of us man. Man is the designation of the whole species. It comes in 2 models, male and female. But it's all man. And then he says, I want to make this particular product in my own image. Write the word image down. See, this stuff is important. This is what set me free. The word image doesn't mean to look like. The Hebrew word means characteristics. Characteristics. Let them have the same characteristics, qualities of God. No Baptist pastor told me that. My father couldn't teach me that. He didn't know it. I had to find it for myself. I have God's character. Wow. What a discovery for a little boy sleeping on the floor. I am just like my father, God. Oh, my mind was changing. You know, we had teachers from Europe because we were oppressed by the British, you know. We were bought there as slaves years ago. My great-grandfather was a slave, you know. And so the British people, man, they told us that we were half-breed monkeys. They were very clear. They said, you are not fully humans. They told us this in class. One of them said to me, you are retarded. Your brain is maldeveloped. You are not able to be educated. All you can do is music and dancing. And that's why they still believe that today right here in this city. All your people do is dance and music. Why don't you run the economy? We're not world changers, we are entertainers. I decided, no, I got God's character. I got to find this. The qualities of God is in you. Every one of you, black, white, Asian, it doesn't matter, Puerto Rican, you have God's image. This is not a message for any race of people. It's for humans. You can do anything you dream. You're just like your God, your Father. Boy, that thing hit me like a bolt of light. Wow. And then the word likeness. I had to look for it myself in the Hebrew. You know what it means? It means to function like. Let us make a creature that has our characteristics and functions like us. That means you function just like God, your Father. Which means you got to study, how does God function? Because if you don't function like God, you are malfunctioning. For example, in God, the Bible said there's no fear. So when you fear life, you are malfunctioning. So I'm afraid of nothing. I'm telling you, literally, I'm afraid of nothing. That makes me dangerous. A fearless man is a dangerous man. I'm not afraid of death. And that's the highest threat you can give me. And I'm not afraid of death. And you'll find that all true leaders have no fear of death. As a matter of fact, they have an affair with death. All true leaders. Why did God create you? Read it. To have what? Dominion. So what was the motivation for God's creation of you? Dominion. Why did God create you? Say it loud. Dominion. Well, what motivated God to create you? Dominion. What was the reason why God created you? Dominion. Yeah, not to have worship services. He never said prayer meetings. He never said to be a bishop. I don't know. Culture has done a good job at us. Here's a guy who's a bishop and can't pay his light bill. Here's an evangelist who owes everybody. Here's an apostle who can't even pay his mortgage. Something's wrong with this. We missed the point. He didn't create you to be a title. He created you to have dominion. Everybody say dominion.
Dominion.
And this is where leadership is born. See? Because the word dominion, I checked it out, is the word radah in Hebrew. Write it down. It actually means to rule. It also means to govern. It means to master, to manage resources. It means to control things. It means to have sovereign authority. It actually means to lead. Please buy this CD and listen to it a few times. Get this in your spirit. That is why you were created. To be a ruler, a governor, a manager, a controller, an authority, and a leader. Now, here's why I changed. Here's why I changed. When I discovered this, I had to discover the second principle. I'm going to give it to you. If he designed you, created you to be a leader, a master, a governor, a ruler, a controller, then there must be the ability to do it. But notice, he didn't give you rulership over people. He listed what you should lead. Birds, fish, animals, plants, and creeps. This is very important. God says, let's make a leader, a governor, a manager, a ruler, not to rule people. So leadership in God's mind is not about people. It's about resources. You've been taught he who has no one following is simply taking a walk. That's what the Chinese taught you. Jesus disagrees. He said, you are a leader whether someone is following you or not, as long as you are fulfilling the management of resources through your gift. But you see, it's the way it works. Here's the way it works. I'm sure it works. First, let me give you this is the secret. Whatever a manufacturer demands, he builds into the product. Write that down. This is what changed me from the floor. Whatever a manufacturer demands from a product, he builds it into the product. Am I right? Am I right about this? Think about anything. Your car, for example, your computer, your iPad, your iPhone, whatever you have, your refrigerator, whatever it's supposed to function as, it is built with. Number two, whatever God calls for, he provides for. Number three, whatever God demands, he inputs. Number four, whatever God expects from something, he injects it into it. And number five, whatever God gave the purpose of a thing to do, he built it with the potential to do it. That changed my life. Because when I discovered the principle of creation, I discovered my ability. Yeah. So when a manufacturer makes a product, he makes it for a purpose. Purpose means to perform a specific function. He builds into the product the capacity to perform the function. And then he sells it to you. And he tells you to demand these certain things from the product. You can demand it because it's already built in. When I discovered this, my life changed. Because suddenly I realized that no one in my environment could determine what I could and could not do. That's when I canceled my European teachers. It was at that point my life changed. I was 13 years old when I discovered this. I want to show you something. Give you an illustration. If God created you to dominate, then the capacity to dominate is in you. Do you get the principle? Okay. So whatever you were born to do is built in. So here's what I want you to take a look at then. Conception does not guarantee manifestation. Now what I mean by that is, a bird and a fish were created by God. The fish was created to do what? Swim. So fish do not attend swimming lessons. I know it sounds simple, but it's very important. Why? Because swim is built into the fish. Why? Because God demanded the fish to swim. So he put the ability in it. Birds were designed by God to fly. So birds don't attend flight school. Flight is built in. I like this one. Seeds. Seeds were designed by the Creator to bring forth trees. You'll never find a seed attending a tree growing convention to learn how to grow trees. Why? Where's the tree? Trapped on the inside. In other words, whatever God created something to do, he built it in. Your culture and your educational system doesn't allow you to discover that. We are educated to be employed, not to be deployed. Seeds deploy themselves and become trees. Fish deploy themselves and they swim. Birds deploy themselves and they fly. We are the only creatures God created who don't deploy ourselves, because our culture doesn't allow it. You got to get free from the culture. And it's seminars like this that make you begin to have a meeting with yourself and discuss yourself with yourself and say to yourself, self, am I who I really am? You know, here's my conviction. This is why I believe that buried in every human being is a leader, trapped by an erroneous philosophy that you were born to follow. Let us make man to have what? Dominion. To govern, to rule, to lead, control. Which means that somewhere inside of you is a ruler, a controller, a leader, a dominator. Somewhere in there. Because he would not have demanded it if he didn't inject it. Which means that your ability is determined by your responsibility. Your potential is designed by your purpose. Your potential is equal to what you were born to do. The best example I can give you is this car. Look at this car. All cars have what they call a speedometer. Am I right? Here's an old one, old Chevy. Now, if you look at the numbers have up to 160 miles per hour this car can travel. All of your cars have that kind of registration, sometimes 200, 180. Everybody got that, right? Okay. Now, when you bought the car, that was on the car. You bought the car with it. It was on it, 180 miles per hour. I'm getting ready to go, okay. I'm so excited. Okay, so you bought this car, you brought it home, and the manufacturer says this car can travel 180 miles per hour. How can the manufacturer put that on there? What makes him so sure that this vehicle could travel 180? That's the first question. The second question is, have you ever traveled 180 in that car? No. Let me tell you how stupid our philosophy of our countries are. We sell a car that could travel 180 and put a sign up 50 miles per hour. It's amazing. It's crazy. I don't understand it. I have no idea how they got this idea. I don't know where it comes from. But it tells you the nature of your culture. Don't try it. They give the company permission to build the capacity, but restricts your ability to use it. And you never thought about that. And that's the way they think about you. So all your life, you can make 180, but you've been traveling for 50 years at 60 miles per hour. And you think you're living. The capacity is present. Our culture says you can't go any further. And God says, press the accelerator. And your culture says, you can't go any further. You can go no faster. And God says, and your culture says, you can't do that. And God says, let's go. And your culture says, stop. That's as far as you can go. You got to make a decision tonight, see? You have God's ability. And man puts up the signs. You're a follower. And God says you're a leader. You're an employee. And God says you're a controller. You are a subject. And God says you are a ruler. They keep putting up signs. One day, I was in Germany. My wife and I spent 6 months in Germany. And one day, we were going from München to another city for me to speak. And we got on what they call the Autobahn. The Autobahn is a road without limit, no speed limit. Okay, once you get, you can go as fast as you can. So my host was driving in beautiful black Mercedes. And you know me, I'm from the Western world where there are signs everywhere. Okay? You guys ain't got no Autobahns here. So I'm on the highway, man, and he said to me in German, I spoke German. He said, have you ever been on an Autobahn? I said, what is an Autobahn? He said, this is the street we're about to enter where there's no limit. We can drive as fast as we want. I said, what? He said, would you like to drive? I said, yes. For the first time in my life, I have an opportunity to open a car. I felt so excited. I said, man, I get to drive. He said, yes. So he pulled off to the gas station, switched. I got in the car. Hey. My. He said, go on, turn off. We turn off onto the highway. He said, okay, go ahead. He says, we're going to be driving for another 4 hours, so don't worry about it. And man, I began to see that needle go up, and I become excited. And I hit 60, right? Mentally, 60. I go, oh dear. He says, go ahead. I said, really? He said, go ahead. And I went up, 80. And my whole heart begins to pump faster. And I'm thinking, I'm flying. He says, Dr. Munroe, please go ahead. I said, you mean? He said, yes, go ahead. I went up 95. He says, go ahead. Now, the car could make 250. And I'm thinking, oh, Jesus, man. He says, go ahead. You are going too slow. Cars are passing me. So I hit 100. And my whole body began to rebel. My mind began to rebel. And I realized that I was corrupted by my culture. And he said, you are going too slow. I ran 120. He said, will you please? Now, by this time, I'm the only car on the road. I'm feeling now, man, 125. This is it. I'm the fastest man in the world. And I'm flying out. I'm flying. All of a sudden, 10 minutes later, a car passed me. He said, I told you you're going too slow. I went to 150, and my whole body, my whole mind, everything locked up and said, you can't do this. He said, what's the matter? I said, this is 150. He says, you're still going too slow. This is the Autobahn. The average speed is 185. He said, do you still want to drive or you want to pull over? I said, I'm going to try to drive. And at 170, there was a barrier broken in my mind. I never forgot that to this day. 170. Something happened to me, and I realized there was life after 170. Wow! Man! 185, man, I'm flying. Shoo! I said, can I go more? He said, go ahead. And 190, shoo! I said, can I go? He said, go ahead. 200, man. I'm sitting there going, yeah. He said, now we're driving. My life has changed that day. No more barriers in my life. There was a point where I had to break it. That's why you're here this week. I'm going to take you to that point. You got to break it. There's life after your job. There's life outside your career. There's life beyond the pulpit. Don't let the pastorate become your gauge. There's life. Beyond your employment. You gotta break it. You're a leader. I call it unreleased potential. Driving at 50 with a car of 150. See, you think you're doing well until someone passes you. I thought I was doing well. The guy passed me. I said, excuse me. Tonight, I am the German sitting in the passenger seat. That's who I am for you right now. And I'm here to tell you, go for it. Go a little faster. Break it. That's who I am. I'm the guy sitting on the passenger side saying, you're going too slow. You could do better than this. You're a leader. I hope that this first night will cause you to think about your own limitations. Because that's you. The Creator is the only manufacturer I know who hides a man inside a boy. He hides a woman in a girl. He doesn't create women. He hides them. He doesn't create men. He hides them. I wonder who's trapped in you. I wonder if we'll ever meet you. I guess the graveyard will get it. Today I look at myself in the mirror and I kept thinking, that was on the floor with the mosquitoes and the roaches. I wonder who's sitting in your chair right now. You're a leader. Can you see yourself? You know why you're still alive? Because the manufacturer ain't satisfied. He's bored. He's telling you, you've not shown yourself yet. Show yourself. Let me close with these statements. Write them down, please. You were born to lead, but you must become a leader. That's the purpose for a seminar and a conference. I'm not here to make you leaders. I am here to expose you as a leader. A seed is a tree, but it must become the tree. And that's the way you are right now. You are a great woman, an awesome man, but you must become. It is my passion, my hope, my anger that no human being die until they are manifested. Let's meet you before you go. Let the world see who you really are before you leave us. Show us yourself. Show yourself. You could run the race. Running the race of life is not about beating people. It's about releasing yourself. That's why great leaders never compete with anyone.
That's right.
They are in competition with themselves. They try to see how much of themselves they can release tomorrow. It's leadership. I will never compete with you. I'm too original. Repeat out loud, please. Go. You were not created to lead people. Number 2, read. You were created to lead in an area of gifting. Number 3, read. True leadership is born when your gift is discovered and served to the world. Number 4, read. The value in each human is the gift they were born to deliver to humanity. That's you. There's something you carrying that we need. I told you that leadership is not about people following you. It's about you discovering yourself, your gift, and then serving that to humanity. Leadership is, it's like a tree. You know, a seed becoming a tree and then bearing its fruit. You will never find a fruit tree bringing its fruit to you. I'm giving you the greatest secret of leadership right now. Leaders don't seek followers. Followers are attracted to leaders, just like you are attracted to the tree's fruit. When you go to a fruit tree for the fruit, you don't go for the leaves nor the branches. What do you go for? The fruit. And that's why no one's following you yet. Because you're not manifesting your gift. Before I leave this city, by tomorrow night, I'm going to help you find your gift. Because when you find your gift, they will find you. And then they'll pay you for it. They will follow you for your gift. I'm talking about your gift you're supposed to give to humanity. The greatest statement I've ever heard about gift and leadership is this: for I did not come to be served, but to serve myself, a ransom for many. That's why we come to him. If you want to be ransomed, you come to the tree. I serve myself, he says. That's why the greatest leadership in the world is to become a servant. Get it? It doesn't mean you are a slave to people. You are a slave to your gift. You serve it. But if you can't find it, you can't serve it. Therefore, you become employed. Tonight is the beginning of change for you. I came from around the world to talk to you because the Creator is ready for you to manifest yourself. What a meeting we have these next 2 days. You're going to meet the most important person you ever met in your life. You're going to meet you.
Thank you once again for listening to this message, as we hope that it has been a blessing to you. Our goal is to show you new paths and opportunities so that you can discover your purpose. It is your love, support, and partnership that makes Munroe Global possible. Please visit us online at www.munroeglobal.com for more product, partnership, or to join us at one of our live events around the world.